Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. I'm back from a mini break. I didn't film any videos last week, unfortunately. I'm so sorry about that. I decided to take a bit of a break in order to rest and also because in the next few weeks / months things are going down. Okay, and I wanted to mentally prepare myself. I wanted to plan ahead and get some video ideas going, so I decided to take a bit of a break last week, and maybe there will be a couple more breaks in the meantime, just to give you a heads up. But I'm preparing, okay? I'm preparing for what's to come, okay? Because we know Marvel, we know blockbuster cinemas opening, we know things are to come, okay? So don't even worry about it. But in the meantime, even though I didn't give you guys any reviews last week, it doesn't mean that I wasn't watching. It doesn't mean that I wasn't still consuming content, because I absolutely was. And for today's video, we're just going to be having a bit of a chat about what I've been watching the last few weeks and months, and what I've been enjoying. And you guys can let me know down in the comments what you guys have been watching as well, and maybe I can give you guys some recommendations. You can give me some recommendations. Like, let's make it a fun time. This is super casual. I don't have anything planned or noted down here, and also I'm not going to be spoiling anything when it comes to the TV shows and movies that I mention. So just a heads up, you can watch this without fear of being spoiled, unless I mention that there is a spoiler, in which case, close your ears or whatever. But yeah, like I said, this is just a chill time. But before we delve into all of that, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, let's get into what I've been watching. So first of all, we're not going to beat around the bush. Because we're talking excellence straight up. Just right up top, we're talking excellence. We're talking brilliance. We're talking HBO. We're talking HBO, which has that special kind of crack. Yes, I'm talking about Mare of Easttown. Mare of Easttown. I'm absolutely watching Mare of Easttown. Kate Winslet giving us spectacular, giving us excellence every single week. I'm absolutely watching Mare of Easttown. I again will not be discussing spoilers, okay? But let me just say, I just watched the episode where everything goes down. I think it's episode 5 or 6. Wow. I was on the edge of my I was past the edge of my seat. Wow. At first, when I started watching the series, I was like, okay, here we go. HBO loves to do this, a small town and there's a murder and there's a police investigation. We've seen this time and time again. But then as the episodes kept going, I was like, there's something about this that's a bit more endearing, a bit more likable, a bit more addictive than the usual fare that we see within this subgenre. There's something about this. Obviously, there's the Kate Winslet of it all, who's just like excellent. Like, in terms of actresses who like dress down and like don't wear makeup and put their hair in a messy ponytail in order to look like a regular person, in terms of that subgroup of humanity, I think she's doing a particularly good job of actually looking like a regular person. Like, I find her endearing, I find her enjoyable to watch and relatable. So yeah, I do think she's doing a great job of disappearing in this role in a way that some actresses just simply cannot. So praise to her for that. But on top of that, there's also the added element of the characters just feeling real. They feel like three-dimensional. Even the characters that aren't on screen often or for a very long time, the world just feels real to me. Like, I feel like it's just a step up from the usual fare that we see. And also on top of that, what makes it feel like a real world is that the characters actually have moments of humor and like levity. And oftentimes we see in this subgenre of murders in a small town, and we see that everyone in the town is always so dry, dreary, depressed, sad, anxious. Like, it's just a low time all around, a terrible time all around, because these murders affect these small towns so much more prevalently and so much more viscerally. But in the case of this show, we do get like moments of levity. Like, we do see that even in the most dire moments in people's lives, they can still share a little bit of humor, especially in the case of Mare's mother, who's really fun and really sarcastic and has that dry wit, which I love. So yeah, I really do appreciate that about these characters, that even though they're in this awful situation, clearly like it's an awful situation, they still have moments where they feel human, when they smile, when they share jokes amongst each other, or say things that are inappropriate amongst each other, when they're in the privacy of their own homes. And that's just what makes this world feel more more realistic and more relatable than some of the other, you know, worlds that we've seen in this subgenre. So I think this is a great show. I think HBO has done it again. The crack in HBO is working. Okay, I think this is a great show. Even though in episode 1 I was like, okay, let's see where it goes. But at this point, I'm in. At this point, I'm in. Apparently there's 2 more episodes. I'll be watching and I'll be reviewing. Don't you even worry about it. I will be watching and I will be reviewing. Absolutely. Also, side note, Evan Peters. Points for having Evan Peters here, being used wisely, being used properly, unlike with WandaVision. We won't revisit that. Okay, so next up we have a complete detour. Next up we have a show that makes no sense. It has no business being mentioned on my channel, to be honest. Okay, but just bear with me for a second whilst I express my emotions that have just been building up within me for weeks now. I need to talk about Married at First Sight season 12. I'm not going to get into everything. Don't worry if you're thinking, what, a reality TV? Don't worry, okay? This is the only reality TV show that I watch, and it has given me heart palpitations every week for the past, 16 weeks at this point. This show is... Chris and Paige. Listen, if there's like one of you guys who watches Married at First Sight, comment down below and let me know what your thoughts were on the reunion, because we can discuss. I can't believe what I just watched. And literally, like, this show has been raising my blood pressure. This show has been making my hair fall out. This show has been giving me adult acne. Like, this show is just the worst. Chris and Paige's whole relationship, he sucks. He's an awful human being, and it hurts to see her fall for it time and time again. It got to the point where I couldn't deal with Paige either, because I was like, this is just getting so overwhelming. I know this won't make sense to the majority of you who don't watch this series, so I will keep it brief, but just know that I've been on this journey and I'm ready to get off the train. I'm ready to get off the train. Next week can't come soon enough. And honestly, I don't know why the reunion had to be split into 2 parts. Like, we're really milking it at this point. I'm tired. I'm glad there's going to be a break until the next season, because honestly, I've just been put through it. Okay, so next up, let's get back into the excellence. Okay, let's get back into the brilliance. Of course, I'm watching The Handmaid's Tale season 4. Okay, so here is the part where I'm tempted to give spoilers. Okay, so warning, spoilers. Warning, but I just watched the episode where June finally makes it to Canada. Wow. Well, they did such a good job of making it feel like the moment had the gravity, the moment had the meaning that it deserved, that it needed, considering the journey that June has been on since season 1, episode 1. They definitely fulfilled that moment to me. That episode is phenomenal. That episode was brilliant. I have to say, when it comes to The Handmaid's Tale, I usually judge it by the journey overall as opposed to the individual episodes, because sometimes they can bleed into one another, and you know, some episodes don't feel as remarkable on their own, but just the series overall is absolutely outstanding. But in the case of this episode, I feel like it was particularly memorable because of the journey that it took us on, with the relationship between June and Luke, and her relationship with Moira, and the doubts that Moira had about Luke. I wonder if that's seeding in some character, some personality characteristics that we haven't seen yet in this character, and that might manifest now that June is back in contact with him. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's definitely giving us a different side of Luke that we haven't seen previously, because beforehand he's been portrayed as this like perfect or near perfect husband, so that will be interesting to explore. But in the case of Moira and June, I do think their friendship was explored really nicely here in these kind of small moments, but really important moments, and of course relevant to the overall plot. And of course, when Moira sees June and the look of just surprise and shock and relief and just disbelief in her eyes, I think Samira Wiley did a great job of portraying that. So overall, this whole episode, like, I don't know where Janine is. I don't know if Janine survived that crash. We didn't see her dead body, so I'm guessing it's likely that she may have survived, because that's TV show logic, right? That's TV show logic. We'll see if we see the character again anytime soon, but in the meantime, when it comes to June's journey, even though she didn't end up taking Hannah with her. I do think that seeing her in Canada was necessary at this point. We needed a win, no matter how small it was, because it can get a bit dire. It can get a bit depressing. It can get a bit depressing watching this series season after season, year after year, and just not feeling like enough movement is being made. And I feel like when the kids were saved and, you know, there was finally a little glimmer of hope, that's when I started to get a little bit more interested in actually in the series, because it felt like something was happening. Whereas when the show is just at its low points and we're just kind of beating down these characters time and time again, June literally being tortured time and time again, it can get a bit difficult to watch, not gonna lie. I mean, the show is incredible, the show is beautiful, but it's a bit tough to watch, you know what I mean? So I appreciate the small wins when it comes to the Handmaid's Tale, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this story runs out in this season. And once again, of course, you can expect a review of the Handmaid's Tale season 4 on my channel very soon as it wraps up. And next up, speaking of TV shows that are incredibly difficult to watch, that can feel quite dire, that can feel quite depressing, we have The Underground Railroad. Now, The Underground Railroad was actually one of the releases from last week that I intended to review. There were a few releases last week and it was quite overwhelming. It's one of the reasons why I decided to take a rest. But The Underground Railroad is this, you know, series about the American slave trade, and it is created and directed by Barry Jenkins, who of course is the highly acclaimed director of the Academy Award winner for Best Picture, Moonlight. And so I was really excited to see this series when I heard about it, but I did not anticipate just how heavy and how difficult the series would be to watch. I'm used to watching, you know, like slavery films and TV shows. I don't watch a ton, but I'm used to watching these movies like when they come out. But there's something about having endured 2020, which is nowhere near the same as, you know, the subject matter of slavery overall. Like, that's not the same at all. But I'm just saying, in terms of my mindset after the hell that this last year has been, I don't think I'm quite mentally there to consistently absorb content that is so dour, that is so depressing and just so horrific. I watched the first episode of The Underground Railroad and yeah, it's very explicit. The violence is just horrible. The oppression, the suffering of these people that were, you know, exploited, that they were oppressed, they were tortured. It's just really horrible and heavy to watch. The entire season of the show dropped at once last week. I don't think anyone in their right mind should binge watch this show. I was going to binge watch the show in order to review it, because that's how I would have been able to get the review out by Sunday, but I just couldn't find myself being able to. Like, I literally just stopped at episode 1 and I said I'll watch the other episodes on a weekly basis, because there's no way I can sit there and binge watch this amount of suffering and pain. I'm just not in the right mind frame to do that. And I do think that that is heavily impacted by the year that we've all had. Like, I just want to watch things that give me a little bit more joy, a little bit more lightheartedness. Like, one of the things that I am currently watching is Futurama, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, just something that's, you know, fun, a little bit more lighthearted. Not everything that I watch is, you know, fun and lighthearted and superhero content, as you can see from this list so far. But watching this slave show, you know, just binge watching it in one sitting, no, that was never gonna happen, okay? I will say, in terms of the show itself, it is just beautiful. Like, let's be real. Barry Jenkins, please, did we expect anything? Like, Barry Jenkins is an incredible visual talented director. Like, he is a visionary director. The series is beautiful. The series is so artistic and incredible. It feels ethereal, and I just think overall it looks stunning. It feels spectacular. It feels remarkable, like it comes from the mind of a visionary. But that doesn't change the fact that the subject matter and also the contents that we see on screen, the suffering that we see on screen, is very explicit. It's very heavy to deal with, and I just feel like I'm not equipped to deal with that all in one sitting right now, so I'm just going to portion it out. I haven't even watched episode 2 yet. Like, I keep starting it, but I just they end up moving on. And I feel bad because I want to watch the show. Slave stories are still incredibly important to be told. We don't want to find ourselves forgetting the horribleness and the severity of what happened in America for centuries and what happened elsewhere in the world for centuries and is still happening. So we don't want to forget that. I think it's important to still see these stories be told on the big and small screen. It's just, for me personally, I'm not in the mind frame to be sitting down binge watching a slave show right now. Like, it's just not happening. So yeah, I think it's also important to acknowledge that, you know, seeing constant black suffering isn't great. Okay, it's not very uplifting. It's not really, you know, beneficial for us, especially as black people. So I'm gonna take a bit of a break. I'm gonna take a bit of a breather, but that's not to say that the show is bad. Okay, the show is very powerful. I just need a time to take a break. And next up, we have another show that came out last week, except this time it was on Netflix as opposed to Amazon Prime, and that was the mini-series Holston, starring Ewan McGregor. Now, this is yet another entry into the Ryan Murphy-verse that Netflix has going on over there. And, you know, this series was really cool. It shed light on a designer that I personally had never heard of. And, you know, his star has certainly dimmed over the last few decades, which is unfortunate considering how supposedly iconic and impactful he was in the fashion industry, especially in the late 20th century. So I am surprised to see how little I know of this person, considering how important he was to the industry. But yeah, I feel like the series did a good job in teaching me a little bit more about this character. I wouldn't say it did the best of jobs in terms of teaching us, you know, why he was so important to the fashion industry specifically. It did a good job of showing us the rise of the character as well as the fall of his career and his personal life. It showed us a lot of the partying, which I did hear rumblings of his family not being incredibly enthusiastic about that. But, you know, when would they ever be enthusiastic about that aspect of a loved one's story being told? Like, it just makes sense that they would have an adverse reaction to that. But overall, above all else, I think what really makes the series shine is Ewan McGregor's performance in the role. Like, Ewan McGregor was doing the actoring, doing the best actoring. Ewan McGregor was excellent in this role, like truly spectacular. Okay, so he was the magnetic thing that kept me watching episode after episode. Like, he just had that magnetism to him, he had that charisma to him. He just melted. Okay, he disappeared into this role. I think he was absolutely phenomenal. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a bunch of, you know, Emmy nominations and other award nominations for his performance here, although it depends on other competition that might be coming up around the corner. But I just think he did such a great job. Truly, just such a great job. I think the series overall is great. It's not like spectacular or anything. It was really good. And actually, I couldn't help but feel like it was giving me FX vibes. Like, it felt like something that FX would produce, like a Fosse Verdon type of situation. So, you know, it's very much in good company on that front, because Fosse Verdon was also excellent. I think Fosse Verdon was actually a bit better than this series, but still very, very good. Okay, and it was very flamboyant and very extra when it needed to be, but also quite dimmed down, also quite low-key and pensive at moments as well. So yeah, I think the series did a great job of introducing me to this designer, this incredibly important designer from the 20th century. And then I could go off and do my own research in terms of trying to figure out, you know, his impact on the fashion industry during this time. But we have this overall arc that is explored in these, I think, 7 episodes, and I think it's done in a pretty good way. Another series that I am really excited about and have been thoroughly enjoying, and it actually takes place in a similar time period that some of Holston does, as well as touching on some similar subject matters that Holston explores as well, and that is Pose. Now, I absolutely love Pose. Pose is an excellent show. Pose is a brilliant show that unfortunately is coming to an end. Season 3 is going to be the final season of the FX show, speaking of FX, and that is quite unfortunate to me, okay, because I think this series is so groundbreaking. I think this series is so excellent, so informative, but also engaging and also funny and just creative and mind-blowing. I really love Pose. I think it is such a unique show that we don't don't see nearly enough in Hollywood. It basically depicts the lives of the LGBTQ community in the 80s to 90s period at this point, and specifically focusing on transgendered women in this community in New York, and the ballroom culture, and just everything, all of the struggles, all of the strife, as well as the happiness, the community, the family. Wow. Just wow. And on top of that, the performances, like MJ Rodriguez, Billy Porter, please, no one is playing around. Everyone understood the assignment on this one. Everyone understood the goddamn assignment. And the costuming during these balls, the costuming, like, please, like, just no one steps a foot wrong. Everyone understood the assignment. Everyone is delivering what needed to be delivered. It's giving exactly what they wanted to give. I love this series. I absolutely love this series. I'm so sad to see it go. Like, what a shame. On it, I could list off shows that I would rather see jump off a cliff as opposed to seeing Pose end on season 3. Like, that's just the biggest shame to me. But I'm glad that it exists, and I hopefully will be able to do a review of season 3 when it wraps up in a few weeks. So yeah, look out for that as well on my channel. But just a huge fan of the series. Okay, so I'm actually surprised to see how long I've been talking for. Like, as usual, I ended up going way over the time that I thought I'd be sitting down here talking about these random shows for. So we're just going to speed through some other shows that I've been watching. As I mentioned earlier, I did decide to go back and rewatch Futurama on Disney Plus, just to get some levity, just to get some humor, and also because there are so many seasons, it's just easy to breeze through that series. And I really like Futurama. I really enjoy Futurama. I always did. Okay, I always found it to be so underrated, especially considering that people scarcely talk about it when they mention like The Simpsons or Family Guy or shows like that. I personally think Futurama is superior. Am I the only one? Am I the only one who thinks Futurama is actually superior? Like, I'm on season 4, so maybe the tide will turn in like season 5 or whatever. But I think Futurama is superior. I think Futurama is better than a lot of the Simpsons episodes that I've watched. Not to say that the Simpsons is bad. Please, no one said that. Calm down. But give Futurama a watch, because it's actually quite excellent. Another series that I've been watching is New Amsterdam. That series gives me an ulcer, but I keep going back to it. That series gives me tooth decay, but I keep going back to it. It's very sugary sweet, okay? Every single episode, there's a new social issue to be addressed. There's some more social commentary to be heavily handled in each episode. And, you know, Max ends up getting screamed out about how white and male he is every single episode. So it can get a bit frustrating, okay? Because it's like, okay, we get it. Like, there are so many problems with the world, especially considering that it is a hospital/doctors-based series, so of course they address the pandemic, and I do think that they did a pretty good job of addressing the pandemic. At least they have done so far, in terms of looking at it from different perspectives, looking at it from people who had to stay at home versus, you know, the key workers who had to go out there on these like front lines of what felt like a battlefield for a lot of people, but also touching on the idea that some people actually thrived in that kind of environment and don't really know what to do with themselves afterwards when we're supposed to be returning to normalcy. So I really like that aspect of the series and the season, actually, the idea that they would explore these different facets of the impact of this pandemic. And I think it very much relates to the series very well, as I said, because it is like medicine based. But in terms of the other social justice stuff, in terms of Max being like, I'm so sorry, I'm white and male, like, I'm so sorry. It's like, occasionally I can get down with it. Like, occasionally I have a fun time eating my popcorn, like, yeah, you shout at that white man. But there has to be a limit. Like, there has to be a limit where it's like, he's the head of a hospital. Like, he's not a politician. He's a doctor. Like, what can he's not going to fix global warming. Sit down. You're not going to fix global warming, Max. Every single episode, like, I want to fix racism. Max, no, sit down. Please, not. Oh, now, Max, I want to fix global warming. No, please, no. I want to fix homophobia. Oh, God, no, Max, please sit down. Someone tell this man to sit down and actually do his job, as opposed to addressing issues that he literally does not have the capacity to even comprehend, let alone fix in a day. And the final series that we're going to be talking about today is This Is Us. Of course, I'm also watching This Is Us. I love This Is Us. I think it's an incredibly impactful, incredibly emotional series that's also just so consistently good. I think it's one of the most consistent series like ever. Like, it's so good. It's so good. The performances are excellent. I mean, of course, we have Sterling K. Brown. I think I mentioned him in my video from last year talking about MVP characters in TV shows, like the characters that make the TV show, right? I certainly think that Sterling K. Brown's Randall is most definitely a candidate for that category. I think he was even mentioned in that video because absolutely, like, Randall, imagine not having Randall in This Is Us. Like, what would I do? What would I do? The other characters, you know, Kate is fine. She's cool. Kevin is... Kevin. Kevin is Kevin. But Randall and Beth and their family, that's what we're living for, okay? But that's it from me, guys. Those are all of the TV shows that I've been watching at the moment. There are also a few movies, but like, honestly, I've mostly been focusing on TV shows lately. Like, movies haven't really been attracting me as much, so there's not much of note there. And all the movies that I haven't seen lately, I have done reviews for, so like, you already know my thoughts, and if you don't, you can check out those reviews. But it's time for you guys to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Do you guys have any recommendations for what I should watch next? I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very receptive to any recommendations that you guys might have, but please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure you turn on your notifications, as I said. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.